I mentioned.
What's that?
Maybe if it's on a weeknight, we'll be able to.
Well, when it's been on a weeknight, we've met at like 6. We've started earlier at 6 and been done by 9 or 10. So we have done that, but we started earlier. We didn't
Oh,
wait
okay,
till
so that's
7
what I'm trying to
o'clock.
get at, so if we have scheduling issues, then like an earlier start at the June meeting would be something that people would be amenable to.
Plus, as I've been hearing the last 2 months, there's been 3 or maybe even 4 items that we've said, we'll talk about that at the goal setting, we'll talk
Right,
about that.
right.
So
We've
I
already
see our
got things-
agenda is
Right,
really
agenda's
starting
growing,
to
right.
expand.
Mark.
All right, well,
Mark, can you give me a one?
we'll go ahead and
Can I get a one? Yeah.
contact the board and just find out availability. All right, so we're clear that we will set a date for goal setting. In terms of board orientation, we'll just
Trying to quit.
Thank you.
do it on an individual basis
Thank you.
and retreat only if the board sees a need to it at some point in the future. We can move on to student transportation. Okay.
Okay, this item was requested by Karen. Karen, why don't you, I'm not really sure what you...
I'm
what you-
pretty sure that I just asked for a bid, that I just want to make sure that we're fiscally responsible. When I saw, I think that we were spending about $24,000 this year to transport 8 children one way from LT here, that we should investigate. I think, what was it, $150 a day for that trip on Kids Club?
130?
The per day.
130.
Catherine is what?
130 per day. And, when I looked at the bus, you can get a bus, the kids $72, and you have 30 kids on a bus. So my purpose was to see, are we being fiscally responsible with spending that kind of money for basically a half hour, 15-minute trip from LT here? We're not making multiple stops. Understood that, yes, in fact, the person, we don't want to have a pedophile, or, we want to make sure that they are documented. But that's all I wanted, is to see, I thought I was specific with just asking for quotes, get this, or what are our options? Are we stuck with 130? Which, this is good because it tells us that it's a per diem kid, that this year we probably will have 2, so our costs will go down drastically to about $34 a day. It's a $100 difference, that's great if we only have 2 kids. But I think that we need to be prudent with this, that if by chance we get 6 or 8, that we don't just go, okay, $16.25 each, that we look at other options.
Yeah, let me just,
That was what
I think it might be useful for the board to hear some more background on what the options are. There have been a lot of issues with this type of transportation, not just with Pleasantdale, but with a number of districts. And in
With
fact,
using the taxi.
yes, and various providers, it's been in the Tribune, I gave you one article. There's been worse scenarios. LATSI is the biggest user of this, so we actually use them as a resource because they commonly deal with small numbers of students. The laws have changed now where any company that provides services must have licensed drivers. So some companies are claiming that they have some licensed drivers. When we did the research, there was this company that had every driver licensed. And given the fact that these other companies had from pedophiles to drug users to our first concern was safety.
Absolutely.
And the second concern was liability. So we made the right choice with this company. The service has been excellent. The safety issues have been non-existent. And when we did the research, at the time, there was not another company that had gone to the point where they had the drivers available that they could guarantee us every single day the driver would be licensed. You get feedback such as we did a lot of research on this. We have some licensed drivers. And when we looked at this recently, apart from Kids Cab, we're not aware of any company that can guarantee us that all the drivers should be licensed all the time. So we are still looking into it. I do think this is defensible in the sense of what we were faced with and what the potential issues were. It costs you a lot more when you got liability issues and safety issues and court cases and that kind of thing than it does, to pay for a company that is trustworthy, that has good experience with other districts and that kind of thing. So I don't want the board to leave with an impression that we just found one company and said, no problem, we'll pay whatever. Because that was not the case.
When you say licensed, what do you mean by licensed?
Yeah,
Like
as a bus driver.
a bus driver?
Correct.
So first student charges $67 one way at 322, or on Grand Prairie, the short buses. That's all I was looking for, Mark. I didn't want to seem like it was. I just wanted to know, why were we spending $130 a day when I could have a bus at
Yeah, why don't we use a bus, a school bus?
Because you've got, first of all, the contract that we have with First Student, they don't have small buses.
But what about,
And the other thing is LATSI, the prices there are based on an entire contract that they do, and so they get economy of scale and that kind of thing. What we're dealing with is a transportation issue in one situation. That's where you end up paying more because it's not part of a larger contract where you get, you know, a bid type situation.
But if we did a field trip, I mean, granted, this is more of a daily route. I can't even.
Why wouldn't it be a daily route like our band route or our kindergarten route? Why wouldn't we just add that route?
Exactly.
Could we do that?
That's what I'm saying.
Does it make sense? You know what I mean? We have a kindergarten route, they go every day, or a band route, they go every day. Why don't we just add a LT route, you know,
Can
the
we?
math
Guess
route?
that's something.
We could always inquire and add it into the contract if so wish. But, yeah, at that time, we know that first student does not have any small buses, and we'll have to use big buses regardless of how many kids we have then.
But it's
I
not
mean,
Or Grand Prairie,
We have to see
you
what the
can-
cost is and see whether or not, I mean, it's worth asking. As
That's
to
all I
whether or not
ask.
there's a way to do it within our current transportation agreement, and if there is, what the cost would be.
I have two other suggestions, maybe. We spent how much last year, Karen? Approximately?
24,000.
24,000?
About 23 and some change.
And-
23,800.
Like, how about the year before? Do you recall what we
The year
spent?
before, we had, how many kids do we have? We had 4 students.
So that
I
was
think
80
it was 4 and then 8 students, so it was 1625 or 1650.
When you said it was $20 the year before.
$20 was the original with the taxi.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So-
Okay.
Approximately how much
I'm
did
sorry,
we
you're right.
spend the year before? Like,
It's times 176 days.
what, I'm sorry?
176 days. So
Times?
times 176 days.
Times 20.
No,
Times
no,
20?
Times 25, times 4, times 176, if you have a calculator.
Okay, well, okay, so, I mean, I'm not good at listen. All right, let's just say we spend 10,000, okay? And then next year we have 2 students, so we'll spend roughly,
2 times 1625 if they don't increase the price.
let's say 8,000 maybe?
You know.
Because that's, we'll say 7,000. So 7,000. And then the following year, like not next year, but the next year, I understand there's a lot of kids that may be going into this program.
What's the
There's
question?
not? How many
Gina,
kids do you think? What?
Can I just ask that we get to the
Oh,
question?
well, my
I'm not-
question
I'm not
is,
sure what the question
yeah, okay,
is.
so my question is, like, if we look at the historical data, I mean, I don't know if this is far-fetched, but what if we just purchased a vehicle, like the park has a vehicle, a small van that they just use and hire our own driver? Then we wouldn't have to worry about the licensing because we would have control over everything. Or, I mean, I don't know how much a van would be though, so let me just start with that. But I mean, we've already spent almost $42,000 in 3 years. I can't imagine that a van, like a bare bones van, would be much more than that. Or, you know, part of our, I forget what it's called, but you can always enter into cooperative agreements with the park district, and they have 2 vans sitting there every day. So maybe we could enter into some sort of agreement with them, because I think the park would love to get $24,000 a year to let, you know, to provide a driver to drive these kids. You know, I'm sure they would cooperate with licensing and everything. Those vans just sit there. So I'm thinking there's other options maybe we could look into.
A bus runs us 18,000 typically on average, right?
18,000 a year?
Around there, I would want to say.
Well, if you've got $67 for one way, and you figure these are bus trips that are making multiple stops, we've got 1 pickup, 1 drop-off. I suspect that if we asked, we could probably get a pretty good rate for that. It's-
Well, right, but what I'm driving at is if we spent 18 a year, I mean, you picked a year where we spent 24.
Right.
You know, last year we spent half that or less. You know, so when you average that out, you know, does it really work out to like negotiate into the contract, then pull out of the contract, then go negotiate back into the contract, you know, on a year-by-year basis? When you average out, you're gonna be somewhere around that same $18,000. Because if you just took your
We don't know if we don't
24,
look into it, though. We've never looked into it. That's my point. I just want to look into it.
well, we know what a bus will run us. We know a bus will
We
run us
don't.
18 grand.
We don't, that's a normal. This is very atypical. It's you pick up and you drop off at one spot. You're not going to multiple homes. We've never asked. That's all I asked, is
Okay.
if we find out.
Okay, and then Catherine, about what % of our transportation is reimbursed to us?
The last time I checked, I think it was about 55%.